Good morning. My name is Joyce Muller, and I'm here today on March the 10th, 2020, with former president of McDaniel College, Joan Coley, and we're going to talk about leadership. So Joan, tell me, what prepared you for leadership, to be a barrier breaker?
In some sense, I think everything that I had ever done as a leader, starting with Girl Scouts, but later, as I became a leader, I guess it became something where I would look at someone else and I would think, I never want to do that. So in some times it was negative examples, but other times it was positive examples. People that I saw where I said, I'd really like to be like that person, like Freeman Verbowski, or some other president of a college where I said, I really want to be like that person.
You spent most of your career in higher education, really all of it, and you served as president of 2 liberal arts colleges in Maryland. So tell me, within those higher education communities, were there women who inspired you and served as role models for you?
Good question. When I started at McDaniel College, there really were no women leaders at the top. And so there weren't women for me to look to in the administrative ranks. But there was a woman who was on the Board of Trustees, Dolores Snyder, and she was very kind to me early on. And she identified me when I was just a fairly new faculty member and mentored me. And so I would identify her at McDaniel. And as president of Notre Dame of Maryland University, as I had retired, it was just the opposite. Sister Kathleen Feely had been the president there, and she was an icon. She was in her 90s, and she came to me and she said, if you need any help, you come to me. And I thought that was extraordinary. So sort of at both ends of my career, I had different people being mentors.
And from those mentors, what are some of the traits that you would share with those women?
Well, it's interesting to think of 2 such very different women, but if I think about 2 traits that they shared, one was that they were both unafraid in different ways. Dolores Dolly Snyder was a barrier breaker in her own right. She broke the glass ceiling in the Carroll County school system. She was as high as a woman would go in that school system. And she was unafraid in terms of many of the things that she did in that school system. Sister Kathleen Feely was the president of Notre Dame at a time when all of those colleges, all of those small Catholic colleges were being encouraged to meld with Loyola University and become co-ed. She didn't do that. She held out. She put new programs in Notre Dame rather than do that. And the other thing that sort of occurred to me, and I don't know if this is a trait, I guess it is, I think of both of them always as smiling. They both they're both alive, had such a positive attitude. They were always smiling. And I think that whole idea of having a positive attitude is something emblematic of both of them, and something, a little kernel that I took away from both of them.
Are there other lessons that you could share after having been a president?
You mean things that I think were important to me as a leader?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I thought was really important was, and this may seem strange in this political climate, was always to tell the truth. I thought it was important, and I still do think it's important, that if you're a leader, people need to be able to believe you. You can't always, as the president of an institution or as a CEO, tell the entire truth. And if that's the case, you need to tell people that. You know, a faculty member might ask a question in a faculty meeting about an issue, and you know it's something where you can't tell the entire truth, and then you have to say that. This is how much I can tell you, but you don't lie. I guess the second thing is, I think you have to resign yourself to the fact that people who were your friends, and all these faculty people were and remain my friends, but once you cross that line, there does become a social distance. And I had to grieve crossing that line, because as much as you know those people are your friends, there's a difference. You can't interact in the same way. And that was something that was really important to know. And I suppose, if I think about it, a third thing I learned was you have to develop a thick skin. And I know that I could not have been president earlier in my career. I just didn't have a thick enough skin. People can criticize you, and you have to learn not to take it personally. Sometimes they're criticizing the office, sometimes they're letting off steam, but people always can do your job better than you. Faster, slower, higher, lower, it doesn't matter, but somebody can always do your job better, and they'll let you know it, and you can't take it personally.
So you're well known for your sense of humor, and certainly that helped you through those kinds of engagements. Would you talk a little bit how your sense of humor may have helped you in other ways?
That's an interesting question, Joyce. I guess one of the things that I feel about how you should be as a president is you need to be yourself. There were times when I would have to say to myself, just pretend you're the president, because there are times that you really don't feel as if you are. But my sense of humor is part of me. It's how I get through life. And so I wasn't going to be the president without it. And I guess it's a coping mechanism, but it is who I am. And so it is an authentic part of me. And I think it's a way to let people know that not every decision you make, not everything that happens in a faculty meeting is earth-changing. And people, when they're in the midst of making a decision, everything seems so important. And there are times when you just need to lighten up a little bit. And I think that's really important for people to know. And that is part of who I am.
You have certainly faced a large number of difficulties in your role, certainly at McDaniel College, and I think all leaders face huge difficulties in our complex world. So tell us a little bit how you weathered through those.
Well, you hold your breath, and then when you have to breathe again, I think a couple of things are necessary. First of all, you need to have within your own organization people that you can trust. First of all, some of those should be on your executive team. So I had Ethan Seidel, I had wonderful Sam Case, I had you, Joyce. People that you knew were not going to repeat what you said. You don't want to appear weak to other people in the community when things are rough. And so you need to be able to let your hair down when things are difficult. The other thing is, when things are difficult, to the extent that it's possible, you need to consult widely. And so I would want to go to the faculty, to somebody like Jim Leitner, to Kathy Mangan. I would need to have people, so to speak, on the ground who would be able to make the case for whatever the issue was. And so the ability to consult widely. And then I found it was really important to have other people in my same role elsewhere. If you could pick up the phone and call a different president and say, how did you handle this? That would be really important. And there are times when no one else had handled whatever it was you were doing, and you just had to deal with whatever it was. The other thing that I found that was really sanity producing was to have a network totally outside of higher education. You needed a way to get away from the job. And most people who take a presidency, a CEO job, are type A people, and they don't ever want to leave the job because we always think that, oh my gosh, if we leave, something will happen. Well, of course something will happen. Something always happens. But you still need to get away. And so you need those people with whom you can get away. And I think that's critically important. And I did have those people.
So why is it important today, March the 10th, that we recognize women as leaders and also as we move forward in our complex world?
Well, I would wish that 100 years after we have the right to vote, that things were equal. I would wish. But in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of most people, we are still not equal. And so I think it's critically important to recognize young women, women who are coming up. I think it's important for those of us who are fortunate enough to have been able to lead, to do what Dolly Snyder or Kathleen Feely did for me, and mentor people, raise them up, give them some recognition. I've tried in my position to say to young women, go and take some workshops. I never took a workshop in how to be a leader. You know, it's sort of, you learn on the job. But there are many workshops for women. And so, does sexism exist in higher ed, in publishing, in politics? Of course it does. And there's no reason to whine about it. It just is, and we have to deal with it. And to quote somebody who just dropped out, you know, if you ask if sexism exists and the person acknowledges it, everybody goes, whiner, whiner. And if the person says, well, no, there's no sexism, half the world goes, well, you crazy? So, you know, you just trudge on through. And I think that's what we as women need to do. Not to necessarily complain about it, but just recognize the environment that we're in, get the help that we can from other women, and frankly, men. A lot of the people I just mentioned were men, and just move forward. I think that's critical. on November the 10th, not November, March the 10th. November's my birthday. I was hoping people would give me a present.
Well, happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
And thank you for this conversation.
It's been fun. Thank you.